What is up, traders? Welcome back to the channel, and this video is exactly for you if you keep trying to find massive market reversals and keep getting stopped out, trying to find bottoms, trying to find tops, and all you're doing is just losing and losing and losing because you think it's gone too far. Now, this is a huge problem with trading, that traders might think that the move is just too expanded, and since they're not on the originating move, they think it's time for a reversal. So in today's video, we're going to be breaking down what the problem is with that, how to actually spot those reversals properly, and why you keep making those same mistakes. So let's dive right into this. We'll be on the screens right after this intro. What is up, traders? We are back on the screens, and you can see here these are some of the trades taken today, and one of them is actually counter trend, right? It's against the original movement of the market. Now, first and foremost, we want to break down what is trend trading versus counter trend trading. Now, you might have heard this a lot. The trend is your friend. Follow the trend and everything will be good. And counter trend trading generally leads to heavier losses, right? It leads to the wrong decisions. It leads to trying to catch bottoms and trying to catch tops. So all in all, trend trading is just following the current movement of the market, right? If the market is going to the downside and we have continuous selling, lower lows, lower highs, the trend trade is to trade on the side of the sellers. It's the same thing if we have higher highs and higher lows, we're trying to trend trade on the side of the buyers. So we're pretty much either selling rips or buying pullbacks depending on the trend. When we counter trend trade, we do the complete opposite, right? So if the market is moving down, counter trend traders are going to be looking for turning points where the market might pull back up, or if the market's rising aggressively, they're going to be looking for turning points where the market is actually going to sell off. Now, the biggest issue with this is that these counter trend traders, right, generally what happens is that if you miss the originating move, you might think, okay, well, crap, I missed it. There must be some kind of a reversal, right? There must be some kind of turning point because I'm not on that trend. They think it's gone down too much, it's gone up too much, and they think it's just too much. It's too much. It has to reverse. It has to turn around. There has to be some kind of turning point that will allow some kind of profit taking, some kind of stop run to happen. But a lot of the times, they can't pick out those bottoms or those tops because it's a very difficult thing. The issue with calling bottoms or calling tops, catching knives as they're falling down into your hands or trying to catch rockets as they're exploding higher, they're high risk, right? Because the current trend momentum continues in that direction and it's going to be harder for things to turn around. You don't necessarily know where the bottom is. You might have a support area, you might have a resistance area, and price might just blow right through it. Now, they're high risk, but they're also high reward if you can catch them, so it's very attractive. There's a sense of ego that is uplifted within these trades. Knowing that you've caught the top or that you've caught the bottom of a market move is very, very satisfying, right? When you look at the market and you see massive inflection points, you might think, oh, okay, maybe if I was long here, if I was short here, if I was long here, this would be a fantastic day. There'd be a lot of profit, so on and so forth. Majority of the time, counter trend moves, they happen because the trader isn't on the initiating move. And trying to call a bottom just because there's a support at a certain area or prices have gone down too much is going to really cut your hands up. And a lot of these moves, you might have to try once or twice or 3 times because they're such high risk and high reward that they're usually not going to happen on the first time. But instead of trying to break things down and say, okay, there's a support because we held this area before, there's a resistance because we held this area before, instead of going through all of that, why don't we understand what the market mechanics actually look like for a trending move and a counter trend move? Now, the main thing that I'm looking for in terms of market is to understand the overall general trend of what's going on, right? This could very easily be established by generally watching as the day shapes up with lower lows, lower highs. It's a very, I would say, base level of doing things. One of the best ways to do it here with this NASDAQ, for instance, we can look at the S&P, NASDAQ, whatever kind of market you like. One of the best ways to understand trend movement is going to be based on movement around volume profiles, right? You can use price action, you can use other tools, but the easiest way for me to understand what's going on is auction market theory. I think this is a good practice for everyone in trading to have a good understanding of volume profile. So what's the deal here? Now, if we look at the volume profile, whether it's a larger composite here on the right-hand side, this is a 200-day, or a weekly volume profile here, again, it's on the right-hand side, but it's more colorful. What we're trying to do is we're trying to find areas of value, right? Areas of value are regions that have thick volume that's stacked together, that holds things out, right? That's a bunch of high volume nodes clustered in one region. What does that look like, right? In some cases, especially if we're trading into all-time highs, it might be a bit difficult to identify here on this larger 200-day profile, but there's always going to be some kind of information realistically. So the information here on the weekly profile is much more obvious to us, right? So when we look at this and what's going on, we can say, well, yeah, okay, I see pretty stern value in this region that has a lot of volume, right? So something like this, for example. We see that this is a region that sustains pretty heavy value. It's a region that sticks out like a belly to us, the biggest drop-offs on either side. These are going to be the guidelines for the market movement, right? Whether it's a trend move or it's a counter trend move. Now, if I'm looking at this and I'm trying to decipher what kind of trend is actually taking place, if we're able to move into distributions, let's say from above, if price starts above and we move into it from above into it below, the directional momentum is expected to hold to the downside. The downside meaning that we should see lower highs, lower lows, and we have a trend move that is bearish, right? So if we're not on the side of this bearish move, a lot of traders might think, well, okay, we can counter trend trade this by finding areas of support to find if the buyers are actually going to step in. But instead of me trying to pick out, okay, where the bottom might be based on two support zones we might have in this distribution or the other extreme, even down here, instead of me saying, okay, I'm just going to buy the lows of the balance, which there's an area in and around this 215 on NASDAQ, and there's the auction bottom area around 170. Instead of me just blindly going like this and saying, I'm just going to shoot both of those areas to counter trend since I'm not on the short, what I'm going to do is actually wait for some kind of failure. What I mean by that is allowing prices to actually initially break through that support, because it's going to be a lot easier than just picking up that knife. I'm going to wait for the prices to actually break through that support from a structural perspective and then climb up and start presenting higher lows to support that area, right? That's going to be step number one. It's going to be the same case if the market is ripping higher. Look at this trend day. Look at this trend day right here from yesterday. Instead of me thinking, oh my God, it's gone up way too much, let me start selling it, I should look at it from the perspective of if we fail a move into a resistance, create lower lows, lower highs from that resistance, right, a little head fake, then I can look for the turning point. Otherwise, I should just be long, long, long. So there's going to be two instances from today's actual price action that tell us, you know what? There is some kind of failure and absorption that may take place. The second part is order flow. We want to see if absorption takes place. Absorption is just aggressive selling into a low that actually pulls back up, right? So it's aggressive selling into a low that doesn't continue to the downside. So that's going to be a criteria for us to say, you know what, this is actually holding out support structure. So if we take a look at what happened throughout the day here based on our levels, well, the first area we have is the balance top, which happens to be around 25,260 here on the NASDAQ, right? The first move under it, this is the acceptance of the balance. The balance bottom is this yellow area here. So you accept, you pull back down. The first area of support within this is going to be, like we said, it's around 220 here. You can see the volume drop off right over here. So instead of me saying, I'm just going to buy it, right, and risk getting stopped out as we drop down to 200, I can say, let it rip lower, and then once it starts moving back up and creating potential higher lows, that's going to be my long position, right? I can look at this and say these are the lower highs. Once it rips back up and actual absorption takes place, I can look at the higher lows. So this is the same area where this yellow line is this 215, 220. Same thing, we come down into the area, this is a pullback for the continuation. You have absorption, you let it rip higher, and then the higher lows, bam, this is our counter trend move. Instead of me just being like, okay, I think this is gonna bottom out here, knife, 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 hands are gone, right? Bottom of the distribution, we said it was 160 area based, 170 area based on the auctions, right? We have this auction low over here. Instead of me saying, you know what, let me just grab this knife down here, right? In some cases it can work. Why not let this thing actually head fake, rebid, try to head fake, right? Rebid, and then we can find areas of higher lows to buy when this absorption actually takes place to find that reversal. So even if I'm buying at slightly higher prices, trying to catch a move that's reversing from downside trends, I'm actually increasing the probability that it'll work instead of me just saying, okay, that's a low, that's a low, that's a low, that's a low. Now, if you have very good auction areas, auction extremes based on the volume profile, you might get away with some of these, right? But one of the best things to do, instead of just trying to pick out tops and pick out bottoms, specifically on upside trend days. Upside trend days are going to be the worst for sellers. They're going to get absolutely destroyed over and over again because they think there's a top here, there's a top here, there's a top here. You might get a few points at a time, but the overall move is to the upside. If there are no structural shifts, there should not be a fade. For instance, right, we could say, okay, well, I have a resistance up into this 170, right? I sell it, or sorry, this is the 170. I sell it, it just goes straight to stop. I got a resistance up over here at 220. Okay, it works out pretty well. But if I want to make sure, I want to see this thing break above, right, absorb, head fake, right, lower highs, come back into those same lower highs, and then I can look for that short move to fade it to go counter trend instead of me trying to say top, top, top. Because for every time I call a top, right, maybe I hit 1 out of 4 times, right, 25%, maybe I hit 1 out of 3, 33%. It's not going to be that clean. Instead, I'm going to wait for, let's say, a resistance, a little head fake, incremental lower highs, right? Change of structure, pullback, continuation in that direction with a lower high for that fade. It's the same thing if I'm going to buy it and say, you know what? I think there's a bottom here. So support, right? Head fake, bids back up, pulls back higher or low. Okay, maybe there could be a reversal from this perspective. It's going to save you a lot of pain if you have these specific rules in terms of trying to catch reversals and even understanding trend moves. So I want to do a video even on trend trading and trend moves that might help us as well in the future. But I'm going to leave you off with this last final note. When I'm trading these kind of trend moves and counter trend moves, especially counter trend moves, if I look at order flow and I look at delta, right, I want to make sure that there is some aggressive absorption into lows. We looked at the prior chart over here with the red bars, but if there's blockades of delta, these clusters of negative delta, and we're starting to change structure around them, meaning you see this cluster over here, if we're starting to hold within these clusters higher lows, that's going to give me a better sign that there's going to be some kind of reversal. It's the same thing with positive delta into the highs. I'm going to do a video fully on this delta profile as well coming up over the next few weeks or so. It might be out by the time you're watching it. But the next 2 videos that I want to focus on are trend moves to complement this and delta to give you a better understanding of my favorite order flow tool to trade. So if you guys have any questions, please just drop them down in the comments. I'll see you guys in our free community at community.tradeproacademy.com, our open Discord, and check out the latest webinar here at Trade Pro Academy. Hit that subscribe, hit that like button. I'll see you guys in the next video.